Hello, it's Alex, the Bookkeepers. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in March. I read 6 books in total, mostly horror, and yeah, they were all good. Some were great, and I had a really solid reading month, so yeah, can't complain. First up, I read Devil Daddy by John Blackburn. This originally came out in 1972, if I'm remembering correctly, and it is kind of an occult mystery involving a character called Marcus, who is a bacteriologist, and he ends up getting involved in a case involving a teenage girl who is brought into the hospital where he works. She has been attacked and raped, and yeah, things go from there. And this was an interesting one. The science angle was pretty unique and yeah, went in an interesting direction. We have a character who is basically the doppelganger of our main character Marcus, and yeah, there's this kind of occult ritual stuff going on too. So yeah, it was an interesting mix and an enjoyable read. I rated this one 3.5 stars. Next up, I read The Punishment by Doris Shannon. I have a separate review video for this one, so feel free to go check that out if you want to hear more of my thoughts. But I really liked this one. I rated it 4 stars. It's kind of a gothic family drama with a psychic character and various other things like incest and cannibalism thrown into the mix too. Next up, I read The Woodwitch by Stephen Gregory. I had previously read The Cormorant by the same author and really enjoyed that, so I was very much looking forward to reading something else by him, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one too. This is about a 20-something-year-old guy called Andrew. He starts a romantic relationship with one of his co-workers, and they finally get down to it, and he is unable to rise to the occasion. She laughs at him and he punches her. So after this incident, Andrew's boss suggests Andrew take some time off and offers his holiday cottage in the middle of nowhere in Wales for him to go spend some time. So Andrew goes there for a period of time. He takes his dog Phoebe with him, and yeah, the two of them are just hanging out in this cottage and taking long walks in the surrounding woodland. And one day he finds a stinkhorn, which is a fungus and is also called a woodwitch, hence the title of the book. There aren't any actual witches here, so it is all related to this stinkhorn mushroom. And basically it looks like a dick. So he is kind of almost taunted by this thing that, you know, is everything that he apparently can't be, and he becomes really obsessed with it, and he decides that maybe if he can grow a stinkhorn, he can kind of present that to this woman that he was seeing as a kind of peace offering of sorts, because she is really into nature and he just thinks that this is something that she would like. So he sets out on this project to create a stinkhorn, and yeah, this is an interesting one. It's totally not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It is pretty bleak for a start, and it is following, you know, pretty much this one character who has this obsession and, you know, has all of these issues going on, and he is stuck in this cottage in Wales. It's very wet and dreary, and the house itself has like damp issues, so there's like always mildew and mold growing in places, and there's like water running down the walls, and there's just this constant dampness wherever he goes. I will give a heads up here for animal related content. There is some maltreatment of animals and some animal death. So during Andrew's time here, he does meet some other people. He meets a few of the locals, and one of them is this girl who is described as 15 or 16, and there is some sexual related content involving the two of them, so yeah, a heads up for that too. But yeah, just like with The Cormorant, Stephen Gregory's writing here is brilliant. I absolutely loved it. It is really quite poetic at times, and this book just had a really strong sense of place and a really strong atmosphere. It's quite foreboding in a sense, and just, yeah, unsettling as well, and very bleak. And yeah, it all builds up to quite an ending, which I obviously will not say anything more about, but I remember putting this book down and just being like, bloody hell. So yeah, I rated this one 4 stars. I thought it was excellent, and yeah, it's one that has stayed with me since reading it and will probably continue to stay with me for some time. Then I read Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Brite. This is a vampire novel set partly in New Orleans and partly in the fictional town of Missing Mile, and we're following several characters, some of whom are vampires, and yeah, eventually all of their individual stories come together. This one I also have a separate review video for, so please feel free to go check that out if you haven't already and you want to hear more of my thoughts. But this was a reread for me. The first time around was during my teenage years, and I remember loving it then and have been wanting to revisit it for ages, but have been putting it off because I guess I was worried that it wouldn't live up to my memory of it. But yeah, I should not have worried because I absolutely loved this one still. I rated it 5 stars. It is my first 5-star read of the year, so that's exciting. Then I read Negative Space by B.R. Yeager. This is a fairly new release. I think it just came out last year. This is about 4 teenagers who live in the same small town, and there is a suicide epidemic going on in this town. In addition to this, there is a new drug called Whirl, which is becoming, you know, part of their lives. This is a pretty unique one. It's kind of hard to describe, actually. I mean, that basic premise is what hooked me in because that just sounded super interesting to me. But to try and describe this any further is actually kind of difficult. It is told from the perspective of these 4 different characters, and yeah, each section is started with one of their names, so we know whose point of view we're looking at. And yeah, a few other things I could mention here. There is an internet forum that chronicles these suicides. You know, there are photos and people speculating on exactly what's going on. And there's this drug that some of the characters start taking, so yeah, heads up for drug use. There are other elements going on here, such as metaphysics and rituals and fun things like existentialism. And yeah, this was a really unique mixture of things and presented in quite a unique way and with a unique voice. It is somewhat confusing at times and it is a bit of a mindfuck. And yeah, it's definitely one that you will have questions at the end. And again, it's one that really stayed with me after reading it, and I've, yeah, still been thinking about it some time after. I rated this one 4 stars. I definitely recommend it. So yeah, I really hope more people check this one out. And I definitely want to read more of this author's work myself. And then last up, I read Kink by Kathe Koja. This one isn't a horror novel. It is more of a character study or relationship study. So we're following this couple, Jess and Sophie. They were both students, but they dropped out and they both now are working just random jobs to pay the bills, but they are very much in love and yeah, love spending their free time together. And at one social event, they meet this woman called Lena. She is very alluring and exciting. And yeah, basically the 3 of them form a pretty quick friendship, and eventually this friendship turns into a romantic and sexual relationship between the 3 of them. So the story is told from the male perspective, Jess, and we are following all of his day-to-day thoughts and feelings on what is going on here, and following the blossoming of this relationship, and then following its journey, and eventually, yeah, into how things play out without going into any spoilers. But even so, I don't think like the plot necessarily is the main focus here anyway. It is very much about the characters and their relationships. And as you know, I love Kathe Koja and her writing is amazing, and yeah, this book is absolutely no exception. It is really stunning in so many ways. It can be beautiful and poetic, and it can be very brutal at times. And yeah, I mean, the relationship character study here it's very unflinching, it's very real, but presented in a quite lyrical way with regards to the prose. I guess one thing to mention is that you might think from the title and the cover that this is like some kind of BDSM erotica, but it isn't. So just to make that clear, there is some sexual content here, but yeah, it's not really what you might be expecting going into something called Kink. So yeah, just to make you aware of that, this is very much, yeah, about the characters and the relationships. I think, as I've already said about 7 times already, so hopefully I got that point across. But yeah, I thought this one was fantastic. Again, her writing blew me away, and I rated this one 4 stars. So that was everything I read in March, mostly 4 stars and even a 5-star in there. Yeah, I definitely can't complain with that kind of reading month. Let me know if you've read any of these. I would love to hear what you thought of them, or let me know what your favourite book that you've read recently was. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video.